This is the Unlock Your Inner Creator series, and I'm your host, Noilyn Mendoza. My intention with this series is to spark conversations with passionate changemakers and creatives that bravely dared to dream of new ways and took massive action. Despite the chaos that's happening around us, a radical and liberated future, a new earth can be realized and is possible if we choose to take brave steps. So I invite you to explore with me what that can look like. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to season 3, episode 4 of the Unlock Your Inner Creator series. We took a bit of a break and now it is spring. We are in a new season. And so this is, to me, a season of rebirth, of new life, of explosion of colors. I'm sure that you're seeing in many parts of the country right now. All of the flowers, everything is in bloom. And also of new possibilities. The last few interviews, we've been exploring this topic around the power of the pause. What does it mean for us to slow down, to restore and nurture ourselves in all the ways that we need, because rest is also a part of the creation and creating process. So as we begin this conversation, I wanted to open it up with this question. What does it mean for you to slow down, tend to your dreams, and give space for deeper connection with yourself and others? So I invite you to explore with me what that can look like. And I'm super excited to have the next guest. I've been looking forward to this interview for a long time. It's with Angela Basbas Ángel, and she's a traditional and holistic healing practitioner, medium and channeler, ceremonialist, multidisciplinary artist, poet, and permacultural gardener. She's continued her indigenous lineage as a traditional healer of the Bontoc and Ibuloy tribes of the Philippines. Angela received a vision directing her to explore how ritual and our innate psychic abilities can translate into the modern world as a step to bridge our ancestral knowledge and to begin healing historical trauma. She has since worked to integrate this directly with her social justice work. I personally know her as a student in her Philippine herbal and folk medicine class, and so I'm very excited to welcome Angela. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you, Noi. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to this too. Happy spring.
Yes, happy spring. So we always start these conversations calling in folks that have influenced us. So who do you want to call in today? Who's been the most influential to you?
Yeah, hands down is my mama, my beloved mother, who lives in my heart. As you know, she passed away a few years ago, but hands down, my mama. Next to my mama, of course, is my Lola, my grandma, Mami Remy. But the two of them, I really am like my mother and my grandmother's daughter. Like it's so obvious. Although I rebelled a lot, I realized that like I was actually just coming back to where they were. So hands down with them, especially with the plants, especially with how I hold my medicine and how I learned very early on to have good boundaries. I think my mom and my grandma both taught me very well how to have really healthy boundaries. So yeah.
Yeah, so welcome in. Wow. You know, it's rare that I hear that from folks that their elders taught them boundaries, because I feel like it's sometimes us learning that right now, because the example is not great boundaries, but I love that you named it. Talking about plants, because I know that you learned so much from your mama. What would you say were the plants that you remember growing up the most?
Definitely flowers and the redwoods. So when my mom resettled in the suburbs here in California, she planted like all of these bulbs and then like 5 redwood trees in the land here. And I just remember we would just plant bulbs and flowers, and there would just be groves of tulips and daffodils every spring. And then there's some redwoods now who are like 30 years old. So I'm grateful that she had the foresight that we need a redwood in this neighborhood. Like I always think about that like the redwood that we have in our neighborhood is the elder of the neighborhood now.
Mm. Yeah, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I was going to ask you that a little bit later, but you were the first person that I learned this from. Is plants are actually also our ancestors, because I think for a lot of people, when they think of ancestors, they think of humans, right? but nature is also, there's very tangible ancestors that have been here for a really long time. And so, yeah, the redwood trees and also the bulbs in some ways, because for those that don't know, when you plant a bulb, it just comes up every year. It comes back.
It multiplies, and then it keeps coming every year. You don't have to reseed.
Exactly. Ooh. So what are other ancestors that you want to call in?
Yeah, I mean, definitely my lineages. So my papa, who is also have passed, he passed early on in my life. And I've had some actually pretty significant like spiritual elders and teachers who have passed like pretty much during the pandemic, not of COVID, but very much elders and teachers that I've had, you know, there's there's also the bigger teachers we share as a collective that have passed recently, like, you know, Thich Nhat Hanh, and I don't know if you know Malidoma Somé, but he's another master healer from the Dagara tradition. Yeah, so there's a lot of these teachers that I've had that have passed recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you brought that up, because that has actually been on my mind. I was like, wow. In the last couple of years, you see a lot of people who have influenced the collective in a really deep way, I would say spiritually, and they're passing all around the same time. And also at the same time, right? Like with spring, they're passing, but also I feel like there's this, it's much more obvious to other people who are not kind of attuned with it, but there's like this new that's being created. And we have this opportunity. What would the new earth look like for you? What do you want it to be?
That's interesting, because I was just contemplating for this, when I was contemplating for this interview, that's where my focus has been. It's straight up been like, that's what excites me. That's what I know I was born here to do. Like, I'm an Aquarius up and down. I have so much Aquarius in my chart.
Rising.
Yay! I have so much in my chart that I'm like, finally, it's my time.
That's right.
I can finally be here and not feel like I'm going against the grain. So I'm just really excited about like these new ways, this new paradigm to get activated, and I'm doing my best to model it. It's hard because like people think you're just loony, right? But that's what I'm here for, and that's what I'm excited about. And you know, I've been talking about these new economies, new ways of exchanging, new ways of relating, just getting out of the scarcity. I feel like this old paradigm that we're leaving, it's such a big example of just scarcity, living out of scarcity. And I'm not talking about like the feeling like they don't have enough, but more so that the fear that comes with scarcity and how that drives like the economy, how that drives leaders, how that drives like what we're going to invent, what we're going to create. It comes from this lack place where, yeah, it's so much fear. So,
yeah, I feel like it's ripe. And you're like, you know, I've been talking about this stuff and people think I'm loony, but then at the same time, I would also say it's actually the best time to have been doing this work, because I've actually seen that people are a little bit more open. Right? It's like the healer role right now is so needed.
Yeah.
And some folks that I would have never thought I would be having conversations on this particular depth are all of a sudden very curious and very, very open. And I don't know if you've actually experienced that or if you've seen that in some of the circles that you've been in.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Like, I wondered if it's just my own silo. It's because I'm surrounded by all the healers and all the high vibes, but I have seen it. Like right now I'm consulting for a few nonprofits that I actually used to work for in the 90s, and all of them now are interested in healing and wellness and like mental health, I would have never thought that I would be returning to them in a whole different way. And yeah, it's there. It's part of the paradigm now, which I'm so happy about.
Absolutely. So if we can go back a little bit, I know you didn't always do herbalism and you didn't always do this work. And you mentioned it back in the 90s, you used to actually do a lot of nonprofit work. I think we have a very similar background. You and I both come from movement work, nonprofit work. What was the catalyst for you to go on this journey now around herbalism?
Yeah. So after this grad program I did that took me around the world, it was like a study abroad program. That's when I knew, well, it was like the time of my Saturn's return. It was the time of this program that I was exposed to all these different ways pre the movement for climate justice. So like it was like right before that even that word even sparked yet in the world. That's when I knew I was not going to return back to the US with the same framework of like, I'm just gonna like keep fighting the man in this way. That's when I knew I needed to be in a place of building and in a place of going back to the land and going back to what might seem primitive, but feels like essential and magical. And my ancestors, it's the ancestors' way. And so I didn't know how I was going to do that. I knew that I came from several generations back of farmers and master gardeners. So that's kind of where I was like, lead me, please lead me. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I want to continue this work. I don't want to be the lineage who forgets. And I don't want to be the lineage who, once our families immigrate to the US, there's usually no more connection to land, right? It's just we modernize, we accumulate, we move to the suburbs, whatever it is. I mean, of course, like everyone will always be a gardener of some sort, but to have like an intention to work with the land and be with the land, that's what I needed to do. That's what I was happy. I could hear my grandpa because he was a tobacco and vegetable farmer in the Philippines. And so it was a confirmation, but it was coming from a whole different direction from what I was used to, the computer and organizing. So it took a bit. And then once I started going in this direction of working with the plants, working with the land, I had been doing all these permaculture trainings and going around the world again to just learn how people have been, working with the land in a more modern fashion. And then all the urban gardens started popping up right at that time. And so I got good at understanding how to work with the land. And then I realized I was like, I don't want to just be farming and, for the sake of taking and for the sake of just eating vegetables, which is amazing, which is great. But I wanted a deeper connection. And so I was, there's something else to these plants that I'm always working with. And I was already like in tune, right? And like always talking to the plants, always like every time I would plant a seed, like I sing a little song to them and, do all the rituals. And right around the same time, I was being pushed to answer like my biggest calling, which is to step into my healing practice. And then I met one of my mentors and colleagues, Ataba Garcia Soisiki, who runs the school I used to work for, Ancestral Apothecary. And she hired me, and then eventually I was taking classes there, and then I became like one of the main teachers there. And so, that was a huge blessing to turn me in the right direction. I think it was all the ancestors. Like I don't really feel like I was, oh, let me pick herbalism. Let me pick this. It was really the ancestors like, no, this is where you need to go. And then I was like so delighted because I was like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing modality. I get to just like hang out with the plants all day. I don't need to be with the humans. I just get to hang out with the plants all day. Like I was, so happy that like I could steward this particular modality.
And I'm so grateful that you did that you listened to the path that the ancestors were guiding you towards. It just reminded me of something as you were talking about, you know, us particularly as the generation that came after our parents who are immigrants. And I remember very distinctly because I took your class twice, actually 3 times now, but the second time I took it in Long Beach when we were going around and introducing ourselves and, you know, why did we get called to take this class? I remember Kay, our mutual friend, right? She had said something in particular that like just really struck me. And it was around, oh, if we don't learn this, basically all of this wisdom from our culture is lost with this generation. And that kind of hit me with a ton of bricks because, you know, I have small kids and I was like, you are right, because we already are losing our language because we're not in the country of our roots. And so it's almost like, I don't know if obligations are, but it's this sacred privilege to be able to do this, to be able to preserve our culture in this way, and then to also find a way home and to reconnect. Yeah, and it's been amazing. And we do it through the plants that our ancestors also were able to eat and to grow. What do you think are other ways that like plants have helped either you heal or that you've seen people who have taken your classes heal through plants?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty infinite and profound to just the basic level of like, you know, deciding to partner up with a specific plant and that's going to be your ally for the rest of the year, for the rest of your life, right? Like all my students now, like somehow they're all best friends with ampalaya or the bitter melon, right? Like, well, the ancestors must be happy about that one because no one ever wants to be best friends with the bitters. But yeah, and like as you know, but maybe not everyone, that plants are so sentient and they in so many ways are more intelligent than us in a certain strain. And when I think about plants, how they've evolved, they're like in a certain path, like there's a very particular path, and they've been able to evolve in a certain way. And from that place, from the soil, from the sun, from the cosmos, they're just learning and they're just taking in everything. And then they're their own particular DNA, right? They're their own particular seed. So they're all different personalities, they're all different beings. Mushrooms like are another, they're not plants, nor are they anything else, but they're kind of a mixture between plants and humans. That's kind of been my description of them. But they they're like universes upon themselves, right? Even just the basic reishi and the edible mushrooms that you use in your kitchen, there's so much DNA. And when I say DNA, I'm saying like history and archives that they host. They're so smart, they're so profound. And so when you eat them and when you take them and when you smell them and hang out with them, you know, the point is to become them, you know, not just like keep consuming them so that you just become a consumer of them, but you start to embody the plant. You know, you start to embody the elder redwood, you start to embody the magical mushroom. That's truly what I think like the highest level of relationship you can build with a plant is like you become them. You know, there's this synthesis that you emulate who they are.
And if you're saying that, I'm thinking on a cellular level, your cells are literally infusing with their essence, right?
Yeah, it's so intimate. It's so intimate.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also you were saying there's imprints of from in the seed of the plants before this, right? Because the plants evolved. And so you're also getting that imprint in your own DNA. Wow, I never thought of it like that, but that's just kind of blowing my mind right now.
Yeah. I think plants change our DNA for the better.
Absolutely.
As long as they're not GMO.
Yes, without a doubt, they
Yeah.
absolutely do. And you see it. Like I think all of us intuitively know, right? As our food has changed. I mean, look at our health, just as a collective.
Yeah.
Right. And there's this return to plants And I mean, I don't know, like, to me, that's like the epitome of decolonizing work, is to come back to the foods,
Yeah.
you know,
Because when I
before
think of
colonizer.
when I think of decolonizing, I think of land. I think of taking land back, or not taking it back, but becoming one with it again.
Hmm.
And yeah, and it goes back to the plants.
It goes back to the plants. Yeah. Ooh, okay. I'm trying to think of the next question, because this is
Yeah.
kind of like I need to like sit with the DNA piece for a little bit. So kind of, to plants, to nature, another thing, you've taught me a lot of stuff through plants, let me just say that. But another thing that sticks out in my mind too was syncing up and aligning with the rhythm of nature. And I remember in particular one post that you had put, because it coincided around the time that I was pregnant with Annika, my second. And it was winter. And I just remember feeling so sluggish. That pregnancy was super hard for me. And it was winter. And you had posted something about you link up with the energy of winter, which is literally to rest, to hibernate, to reflect, to slow down. And I was like, oh, yes, I could do that, because that's literally my body right now. And I remember you saying something around, we also need to look at the other calendars, because so many of us are just so fixated on this Gregorian calendar. And the Gregorian calendar is always like January 1st, new year, new goals, new me, hit it hard, right? And it's actually completely opposite, because at least in this hemisphere, that energy is about winter, about slowing down. So, I'm thinking about all these cycles and seasons and why it's important, especially in the last couple of years, because we've been really forced to slow down in a lot of ways. So, why is it important for people to really understand cycles and seasons?
Yeah. Well, first, it's so good for our health. Our circadian rhythm needs the basic cycles, right? But in the larger aspect, it's another form of really decolonization, because you are going to be in right relationship to everything that's organic, everything that's true and right in the world, as opposed to the clock or all of these versions of modernity that break down what we internally knew, what our ancestors internally observed. And it's hard because we leaped into this agreement that, like, we're all gonna wake up early and we're gonna extend. Didn't they just pass the law of like daylight spending or savings time is gonna be forever
Yeah.
now here? So we just want to have 24 hours of light, which is not how life works. And life has seasons and cycles for a reason, because things have to take its course, things have to take its time, and we can't fast forward things. That's when you run into problems. There's a natural cycle of it all. I always give the example of the mangosteen, right? The mangosteen tree, how it bears fruit every 13 or 14 years. And nobody can speed up that process. Maybe some crazy scientists will, but no one can speed up that process. And because it's gone through those 13 and 14 years of just receiving all of the energies, that's why that medicine is so powerful.
Right. That's right. That's why it's so potent.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of DNA, it's one of the few fruits in the world where it repairs DNA. It literally repairs DNA. That's because it went through its cycle. That's because it respected its cycle. Like, you're not going to tell the tree, like, hey, hurry up, we need you to produce, although that's what they do, right? That's what they do with the modern industry.
Yeah.
So it's the same way with our bodies. We should not be telling ourselves, like, hey, hurry up, make a baby in a month. Like, no. But yeah, it's just being in right relationship to the organic way. There's reasons why nature and this earth, it's a cycle. It's the same reason why we're out of balance and out of whack with our weather, right? It's because we're not respecting the cycle. We're basically trying to change the cycle. We're trying to say, like, we have control over the cycle. We're gonna be working and have a level of productivity for 24 hours each day. Forget the cycles, right? Yeah, and all of our ancestors knew these. There's so many different calendars, you know, the lunar calendars out there, the Mayan calendars. They all respected like the cosmic and the earthly cycles because they knew that that was the organic way. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I feel like if you understand that and you can sync up to that, it just makes more sense. We were literally just talking about Mercury in retrograde, right? And I feel like maybe a lot of anxiety and stress wouldn't be caused if we could kind of understand that, like you said, things have to run their course. There's always a time for everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we always worry about like Mercury retrograde is going to shut down all of our technology, but we didn't really have this problem before because we didn't have as much technology to worry about, and we just slowed down, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple of times. So I wanted to talk about being in right relation. And to me, when I hear, in relation, it's a very indigenous way to approach the world, right? Because we're always in relation to something else, including our planet, our earth. So for those folks who are seeking, maybe this is something new, right? They're so used to not even being outside. I can't even tell you, living in New York City, how many people I talk to that are like, camping? No way, right? They are completely afraid of being outdoors. What would you tell folks like where they can start so that they can start building a relationship to nature?
Mm-hmm. You know, I've been so busy this spring that like I actually am also guilty of not being outside. And there was one day I was outside and this breeze just came, like really, really sweet breeze. And I was like, oh my gosh, it felt like nature like kissing me on the cheek, like here's my like sweet breeze. And that's what I want to say first is that like nature feels so good. Like, why wouldn't you want to be outside? I know like people are like afraid of the dirt, afraid of getting messy out there, afraid of your innate wildness, right? I think like we've been tamed, even though like the city is like the grind and you're hard and all that stuff, but like actually we've been tamed and we're not in our wildness anymore. And so when you're outside, when you're in nature, it teaches you how to be in your wildness. It teaches you, I would argue, even to be in like your sexuality, because everything out there is like juicy and blooming and just ready to blossom and bear fruit. It's all very, this planet is very, very sexual, and people energetically might be intimidated by that. It feels like, oh, there's too much beauty, there's too much going on, but it's also very calming. It's also very, oh gosh, the difference when you've been in front of a computer and then you sit by a tree. It's such a big difference. If you could just get out to your tree, your neighborhood tree, and just hang out there, it makes such a big, big difference. But going back to what we were talking about earlier, like you're with nature regardless if you acknowledge it or not, or regardless if you make the intention to or not. First of all, we are nature. We need to like add that to the relationship. We are nature. We are not outside of it. Second of all, we're always eating food, you know. Where did that come from? We live in homes. Where did that come from? We wear cotton, we wear all these things. Where did that come from? We are nature. We are nature, whether or not we recognize it. And to be with her is to be with gratitude. To be with her is to like just hang out with her. It's just like this. I don't know. It's so easy for me because that's just what I do. But it's like going to visit your Lola. Like, don't you want to visit your Lola? She just has so much to share, and sometimes she might be mean, Like it might be too windy outside, or she might be trying to tell you something, but of course you're gonna go visit your Lola. Yeah, there's so much to be with her. The ocean, I mean, there's just so much.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny that you bring up the ocean, because I feel like, for those of us that have roots to islands, right, and the ocean, I think instinctively we're drawn to those places where we have roots. I mean, I talk to people all the time, what is your family background? And you'll hear it for some reason, like they could be landlocked. That's where they were born and they were raised, but they have this propensity to go to the ocean, for example, or somebody has this propensity to be in the mountains and they feel really comfortable. They can't explain it, but it's there. And it's probably this whole DNA that you're talking about. It's already, we just have to reconnect back to it and allow ourselves, to start learning and to be okay with it. Well, we're in spring officially. So what's something that you are gestating, birthing, creating right now?
Well, things are so active right now. I don't really want to take on any more projects, but it's very active. But one ritual I've committed to this spring, and I thought of you because we've been doing our little seed exchange. I am committing to putting some seeds down in my beds and in the earth every day. So in honor of just like getting out there and like making sure that like I'm tending to the garden. So I'm picking like a seed packet every day or whatever seeds I had from the last season, and seeding the beds, and then having the intention that this is like, the succession planting of like, we're going to have this eternal garden for a bit. And when I think of like succession planting, it's like, it's the generations, right? It's tending to the generations, that you're always thinking several generations forward, so that you know that there will always be enough there. You will be taken care of each time. So yeah, I'm going to go plant some seeds after this too. It's been fun because for me, seeds are wealth, right? Seeds are one of my versions of currency, and like it triples. It's my stock market, right? Like when you seed, when you plant your bulbs, when you plant your trees, you know that that's gonna go on for generations. And that's what my mom did. I took care of a certain section of the garden, and the other parts she just took care of the rest of the periphery, because we have such big space. But I didn't realize she had planted every single kind of stone fruit tree that you couldn't think of. And I was like, wow, I did not realize that she did this. We have a pear tree, a peach tree, a nectarine tree, cherries, and some of them weren't fruiting yet when she was still around. So I didn't realize what they were until they started bearing fruit the last few years. And I was, oh my mom really thought about the future. And in some profound way, like in spirit, I think of it as her gift to me, that I can't be there with you physically, but these trees will bear fruit that you get to eat, that I planted 20 years ago. Yeah.
Why are you making me tear up? Like there's
I
been
know.
several
I
times
didn't
where I
know.
just had to like hold my breath.
I didn't know that's where I was going either.
Right.
I'm just telling you.
She's still feeding you. That's what's coming through. She is still feeding you.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
And then you have your own little orchard over there.
Yeah.
Right. And, this idea of generational wealth, right? It's to be able to continue to feed for so many generations afterwards. And speaking of seeds, you gave me these calendula seeds and you told me, wrote me a little note. They're really prolific. Yes, they are, because they're literally all over. And I'm just collecting. I'm deadheading right now, and I'm just getting so many seeds. I'm just giving them out to people because I have so many. And you're so right. It's just there, and it can not just help you, right? Beautify your home and help your garden, but I get to pass it on to all these other people.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So what's been inspiring you these days?
It is the future present. I don't want to be like future that I cannot control, but the future present, and being in this new paradigm that I'm declaring that it is our time, and I'm just so excited around the creativity, around the like stepping out of this control over us and control over our imagination and our minds that, like, don't get me wrong, what we see in the media and what we see everywhere else, there's a lot of suffering, there is a war, there is all those things that are happening, but the time is very ripe and we're supposed to be doing this. And I'm going to be, and I declare that I'm part of a generation that, like, one, we're doing our healing work. We're doing our healing work to a level where our parents were never doing this kind of work. And I'm so proud of that, even though they still don't understand what we're doing. We're actually really breaking the curses. We're breaking the patterns, right? The traumas. So that's happening. And then just this, there's a newness. I think those of us who are in tune and who were born with the seed, we were born with a seed that I truly believe that our ancestors said, hey, we know that there's going to be a really dark period for several generations, like that generation that right when colonization started, they were, oh, we know that this is going to go on for a while. This is a darkness, our children's children, but we're going to put a seed there. We're going to put a prayer down for that generation that finally when this, now I'm crying, finally when this darkness sees some light, there's going to be a generation that, although they've inherited all of the war and the trauma, they're going to have enough tools and they're going to have enough of our DNA that they know they're going to know what to do again. They're going to know what to do again. They're going to know how to remember again. And they're going to be even greater than our legacy because they will have healed, right? And they will be healing. And so I think that's us. I truly believe that's us. And your children and their children, I truly believe that's our generation. Like I can hear them that, like, it's you, it has to be you, it can't be anybody else. Like, yeah. And I'm happy to take that on. It feels huge, it feels big, but I would be bored nonetheless. I would be bored if I wasn't answering all these huge callings, because I would be stuck in front of a computer. I would be stuck, being scared. I would be stuck being scared. I would be stuck thinking about, like, oh, it's always just going to be like this now. It's always just going to be like this. So I don't want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of the rewriting.
Congratulations. You're the only interview out of 3 seasons that I'm on the verge of crying. I really have to keep myself composed, Angela. Look, let me ask you this, because I'm sure that the folks that are listening to this, there'll be some of them where you're really sparking something that's like deep in them that they may not know is even there. And you're talking about, I could just be sitting in a computer and I would be bored, or maybe this is not what I'm meant to do. But you, to me, are an example of someone that decided to take a leap and to actually really answer what I call a soul purpose, right? Your soul's calling. What advice do you have for them to listen to that inner voice, even if it seems like it's a really, really soft whisper right now? What did you do?
The quality of freedom, it's so much a part of me. Like, again, I'm saying I'm an Aquarius, but regardless of if I'm Aquarius or not, like, the quality of freedom is so much a part of me and is so much a part of the paradigm I want to be in, where, like, people get to be free in all levels you can think of. And if you want to experience freedom, if you really want to experience freedom, yes, we still have, a state that's, about to overturn Roe v. Wade, like all these things, we still have all these things that are happening, but in your wildest dreams, in your love for yourself and your love for life, to express and exercise freedom in such a way where it's your work, like it gets to be how you frame your work. Oh, it's exhilarating. And I'm not saying I'm completely free, you know, I'm not, we're not in the free world, but to actually be able to just create and follow that thread and be received from that thread, it's just such a nourishing feeling. It's just feels so good. You know, I encourage people to just feel good. I mean, it sounds very basic, but like, y'all, don't you want to feel good? Let's feel good. And you don't have to, it doesn't have to be a certain way. And my path is not the path. Like there's so many paths of freedom that whatever your calling is, whatever your purpose is, you can do that. I'm an example. I do not come from wealth. I do not come from like whatever people might have assumptions about people having access to freedom. I'm just being me. I'm just being me and trusting that the ancestors want me to be me and want them to move through me. Yeah.
Beautiful. So my last official question is back to the title of this series, which is Unlock Your Inner Creator. What does being a creator mean to you?
Yeah, I want to humbly receive that title of being a creator in my life, because I recognize that there's so much bigness and so much greatness around me. And being a creator is accepting that divinity wants to express itself through me, and I have to take it on. I'm not going to be saying like, okay, God, goddess, creation, creator, I don't want you to move through me. Nah, let's be small. No, like I want creation. Creation is asking me, the divine is asking me, like, I want to experience how it is to live through Angela's body, to live through Angela's medicine, and we can make medicine together. And so it's just divine expression. It's divine expression. It doesn't, you know, even if I feel this need I have to argue around being godly or being a creator and how that shows up in my Catholic guilt, right? Or whatever. But we're all vessels. We're all vessels. We're all a part of this beautiful creation. And every single spark, I'm truly an animist, but every single person has a spark of divinity, and you have to turn it up. You have to turn it on. Yeah, you have, I mean, that's what it means, I feel like, to be divine on earth, right? If we really want to have heaven on earth, you know, that when I was a kid, that was always like, I was a pretty woke child, and I was always like, I just want heaven on earth. I fell from the sky. But if we really want heaven on earth, we all have to be working within our divine expression, which is our callings, which is our purpose, which is our co-creation. We have to.
So beautiful. Yeah, we are the vessels of that divine healing energy and light. Right. And who are we to deny that? That's
exactly. We would be committing a sin if we didn't accept that. Yeah.
To be in our fullest expression. Oh, so beautiful. Yeah. So I usually wrap up the conversation and I either do a card pull or I do a page pull. So you just tell me, I'm just going to shuffle this and you tell me when to stop, and we'll see what the closing thought is.
Okay. Go ahead and move it and I'll
okay. Yeah, just let me know.
Okay.
Very apropos. The card is truth. And the affirmation is, I live my truth. And that's a beautiful note to end on. Angela, this was medicine. You're always medicine to me. Every time I take your classes, there's like weird synchronicities that happen always. But this conversation really, it really moved me in a very, very, very deep way. I'll leave it at that. I'm trying not to cry one more time. But I love this. And I love that I'm wrapping up this particular season around thinking about pauses and understanding the need for nourishment. This has been a very nourishing conversation. So I just want to thank you, as always, for being here. Everybody else, please stay tuned. We're going to have more episodes coming up. But until then, everybody take good care and continue to be a creator of your life. Thanks again
for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation and you'd like to help support this interview series, make sure to tune in to the next episode and share it with others. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at The Radiant You, you as in the letter U, and sign up for my newsletter by visiting www.theradiantu.com. Again, that's theradiantletteru.com. Thanks everyone, and remember, dream big, dream bold, and take brave steps. I'll see you next time.